I guess I have to address up front. So much of what you related in there, the difference between political rhetoric versus...
Not political rhetoric. I'm quoting the President of the United States.
Political rhetoric versus military...
Director, I'll ask
difference between that and military and intelligence execution. But here's the most important thing. You mischaracterize this as saying there aren't clearly defined goals. The defined goals are very clear. Degrade and destroy the missile inventory and drone inventory, delay and degrade the military...
Welcome back to Freedom Forge. If you believe in truth, strength, and holding leadership accountable, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe right now, because we're breaking down something the mainstream won't tell you straight. Today we're looking at a heated Senate hearing where lawmakers clashed over U.S. involvement in Iran, military strategy, and what many are calling a confusing and inconsistent message from leadership. The hearing focused on the ongoing conflict, the goals of the mission, and whether the American people are being told the full truth about what's really happening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. Mr. Director Ratcliffe, you just described the specific campaign that the President is engaged in, the country's engaged in, with respect to Iran. I think the campaign has been one, in my view, without a specific rationale for the American people. 19 days into President Trump's unauthorized war with Iran, and by which I mean there has been no congressional approval, at least 13 American service members are dead and many others are injured. Yet President Trump has offered no credible justification for an imminent threat, no clear goals, no strategy or timeline. His message keeps changing, I think, in really damaging ways. President Trump said Iran's nuclear facilities had been, quote, totally obliterated in June 2025. But when he launched this latest war, he said we need to eliminate the imminent nuclear threat of those totally obliterated nuclear facilities. President Trump has threatened to seize Iranian oil and demanded our allies reopen the Strait of Hormuz. He said that I'm demanding that these countries come in and protect their own territory because it's their territory. It's the place from which they get their energy. By the way, he wasn't just asking for our allies to protect or to bail them out in the Straits of Hormuz. He was asking China to bail them out in the Straits of Hormuz. And then he said maybe we shouldn't even be here at all because we don't need it. We have a lot of oil. And he said we do not need the help of anyone. President Trump has declared we've won the war. We won it in the first hour. But then he said we're not leaving until the job is finished. He said that there is practically nothing left to bomb, but then threatened to bomb Iran again, quote, just for fun. I think words that probably have never come out of a military leader in the history of the United States of America. It shouldn't come out of the mouth of a civilian leader. President Trump said he will end the war when I feel it in my bones. And any time I want to end it, it will end. But, Director, the war is not ending. It is escalating with thousands of U.S. Marines reportedly sailing toward Iran on an unclear mission, a mission that's become less clear over days, not more clear. Our airstrikes wiped out Iran's missiles and supreme leader. Nobody here, and certainly me, is shedding a tear for him. But the Iranian people now live under martial law. And by the way, no surprise to our intelligence agencies that that's the case. And the first of a puppet leader who's chosen by the IRGC. No surprise that to anybody on the Intelligence Committee. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz and is holding the global economy hostage. No surprise to anybody who knows anything about U.S. intelligence. Launching drones at our embassies and military bases. No surprise. The president is surprised. Nobody who has looked at our intelligence is surprised. Iran's nuclear program is damaged, to be sure, but it still has a uranium stockpile. We heard today from the DNI at the very beginning of this conversation that the regime is in place and they are going to rebuild their military capabilities, the ones that we are destroying right now. The question I think is raised, Director, about your specific engagement is whether it will become a perpetual war, because what Iran will do is exactly what they have always done, and which the DNI is saying they will do again. In its briefings to the committee, the Intelligence Committee has been clear-eyed about what would happen in the Straits of Hormuz, has been clear-eyed about whether or not our military bases, our embassies, and our personnel in the region would be placed at risk and in harm's way, even though the administration did very little to protect them. I know, Director Ratcliffe, that you warned President Trump that if Israel assassinated the supreme leader, the IRGC would replace him with potentially a harder line puppet. In fact, I think what was clear is that the likelihood was that it would be a hard line puppet. Do you disagree with that characterization of the intelligence?
To that specific question, what we knew was, first of all, I guess I have to address up front, so much of what you related in there, the difference between political rhetoric versus...
It's not political rhetoric. I'm quoting the President of the United States.
Political rhetoric versus military...
Director, I'll ask
difference between that and military and intelligence execution. But here's the most important thing. You mischaracterized this as saying there aren't clearly defined goals. The defined goals are very clear. Degrade and destroy the missile inventory and drone inventory, delay and degrade the military industrial base and factories that produce that, degrade and destroy the IRGC Navy that could control the Strait. These are all defined goals that were set out specifically. Well, the premise of the question is that...
time back, Mr. Chairman. I can't get a word in edgewise. He won't answer the question, and then he's taken a minute of my time.
You're both big boys. You can handle it yourself.
Okay, well, Bennet. Director, I agree that you are, and I appreciate what you're saying. And I'm not... My point is not what your characterization of the war is. My point is what the characterization, the Commander-in-Chief. I'm not asking you anymore, Mr. Director. I'm sorry, because I'm out of time because of how you use the time. The complete lack of clarity should matter to everybody. President Trump, most of all, he is the person that got elected on the criticism that we had fought 2 wars in the Middle East that had lasted for 20 years. And now we're hearing the testimony is to get their ballistic missiles, to not even get to the nuclear stuff, we're going to have to be in a perpetual war with Iran. And I don't think that's where the American people are on this. This is a serious threat. This is a serious threat to us and to Israel. The question is how to handle it. And President Trump said, we are not the policemen of the world. He ran on that. And now he's turned us into the world's policeman, into its jury, into its judge, into its executioner. And just because we have the most advanced military in the world, it doesn't mean that we should be in a perpetual war all around the world. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rounds.
Now, let me say this clearly. What we just witnessed in that hearing is exactly why Americans are losing trust in Washington. You had one side laying out a long list of accusations, claiming there's no clear strategy, no authorization, and no consistent message. And on the other side, you had intelligence leadership pushing back, saying the goals are actually very clear: degrade Iran's military capabilities, destroy missile systems, and limit their ability to threaten global stability. But here's where I step in with my perspective. The problem isn't that there are no goals. The problem is communication and leadership clarity. Because when the American people hear phrases like, "We won the war in the first hour," and then hear, "We're not leaving until the job is finished," that creates confusion. And confusion in times of war is dangerous, not just politically, but strategically. Now, the senator in this hearing made a strong case criticizing the operation, pointing out that there was no congressional approval and that American lives have already been lost. According to the testimony, at least 13 American service members were killed early in the conflict and many more injured. That matters. Those are real sacrifices, and they deserve transparency. But here's what I think the senator got wrong. He framed this as chaos with no direction, when in reality, the intelligence director clearly stated that there are defined objectives: weaken Iran's missile and drone capabilities, disrupt their military production, and neutralize threats in key regions like the Strait of Hormuz. That's not random. That's strategy. Now, whether you agree with that strategy is a different conversation, and that's where real debate should be happening. Because here's the truth conservatives need to face honestly. We've always said America should not be the world's policeman. And yet, time and time again, we find ourselves pulled into global conflicts because threats don't stay contained anymore. Iran isn't just a regional issue. It affects oil markets, global trade, and the safety of American allies. So the real question isn't should we act. The real question is how far do we go? And that's exactly what this hearing exposed. You heard concerns about escalation. Thousands of Marines potentially heading toward Iran, unclear mission objectives, and the possibility of this turning into another endless war. That's a legitimate concern. Nobody wants another 20-year conflict. But at the same time, pretending that doing nothing is an option is just as dangerous. Iran has already shown it can retaliate, closing the Strait of Hormuz, threatening global energy supply, launching drones at U.S. assets. None of that is surprising. As the hearing itself pointed out, intelligence agencies expected this reaction all along. So let's be real. This is not about whether Iran is a threat. It is. This is about whether our leadership is being honest, consistent, and strategic in how we deal with that threat. And right now, that's where the frustration is coming from. Because when messaging changes day by day, when statements contradict each other, it weakens confidence, not just at home, but on the world stage. Allies start questioning us. Enemies start testing us. And that's unacceptable. What we need is strong, consistent leadership that clearly communicates three things: what the goal is, how we achieve it, and when we're done. Not vague statements, not emotional rhetoric, not contradictions. Clarity. Now I'll say this as someone who believes in American strength. I support defending our nation and our allies. I support taking action when necessary. But I do not support endless wars with no defined endpoint. And that's the balance we have to strike. This hearing wasn't just political theater, it was a warning sign. A sign that even inside Washington, there's confusion about direction. And if they're confused, imagine how the average American feels. So here's where I stand. America must be strong, but it must also be smart. We cannot afford weakness, but we also cannot afford recklessness. And above all, we cannot afford to send our troops in a harm's way without absolute clarity of purpose. If you agree with that, if you want more breakdowns like this where we cut through the noise and give it to you straight, make sure you like this video and subscribe to Freedom Forge, because we're just getting started.